I invite our speakers to come to the podium, and also Father Nuno Gonçalves, the rector of the Gregorian University, to give the introduction. Thank you.
Eccellenza, signori ambasciatori della Germania e di Israele presso la Santa Sede, illustri relatori, cari professori, cari studenti, signore e signori. Mi è molto gradito porgere un cordiale benvenuto a tutti i presenti all'inizio di questa conferenza su ebrei e cristiani in democrazia. In un modo particolare vorrei dare il benvenuto e ringraziare i due relatori di questo pomeriggio, il professore Menahem Ben-Sasson, cancelliere dell'Università Ebraica di Gerusalemme, e il professore Alberto Meloni, ordinario di Storia del Cristianesimo dell'Università di Modena e Reggio Emilia e titolare della cattedra UNESCO per il pluralismo e la pace religiosa presso l'Università di Bologna. Il nostro incontro di oggi, come è noto, si inquadra nell'ambito delle attività del Centro Cardinal Bea per gli studi giudaici, espressione dell'importanza che la Pontificia Università Gregoriana dà all'approfondimento delle relazioni tra ebrei e cristiani. Tra le iniziative del Centro Cardinal Bea ci sta molto a cuore la conferenza annuale Brenninkmeijer-Werhahn, oggi alla sua 17ª edizione. Un segno chiaro di continuità e dell'importanza delle tematiche affrontate. Un segno chiaro anche della collaborazione della famiglia Brenninkmeijer-Werhahn con la Pontificia Università Gregoriana, collaborazione per la quale vorrei esprimere la nostra profonda gratitudine, salutando la signora Aldegonde Brenninkmeijer e facendo memoria di suo marito, Hubert Brenninkmeijer, che da poco ci ha lasciato. Questa conferenza è anche la prima da quando il padre Etienne Vettot è stato nominato direttore del Centro Cardinal Bea. Quindi questa occasione mi offre la gradita opportunità di salutare il padre Vettot e di ringraziarlo per la disponibilità e l'entusiasmo con cui ha accettato e porta avanti questo incarico. Ringrazio ancora tutti i presenti e il Centro Cardinal Bea per l'impegno e la cura con cui ha organizzato l'incontro di oggi. E grazie a tutti voi.
Just a short word in English. Thank you, Father Rector, for this introduction and for supporting us so well. I'm very happy for this opportunity to start working on this central theme that we have had for this year, Jews and Christians in Democracy. Central theme, so let me say a few words about the theme. Central theme because in this period of time we hear a lot of noise, people speaking about the fact that democracy is in danger, that with the strengthening of authoritarian regimes, democracy may not be the future of the world. It's not as obvious as it was a while ago that democracy is the future of the world. And so something very important is at stake. And the paradox, and this is why it's important also that we look at it from a religious point of view or from the point of view of religions, the paradox is that on the one hand, we could have the impression that democracy fits very well, is very coherent, especially with a Jewish and a Christian worldview. with the fact that God is so transcendent that he is above every human realization, and that each human being is an individual called by God to a personal, loving, free relation. And those are also the elements of democracy. And at the same time, we know that the history of our religions, whether Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, shows a lot of tensions, a lot of difficulties with democracy. It's a historical fact. And it's still the case even in situations where it seems to be a peaceful relation. For example, fundamentally, how can you vote on something that concerns God's eternal law? Should marriage be ruled by state law or ruled by the law of a religion, of the religion? So here have a paradox. They seem to go together, their intention. And I think this is what the Cardinal Bea Center is happy to provide. I think it's important that we confront this question together, Jews and Christians. In our case, we are Jews and Christians, and I'm very happy to also extend the greeting to Professor Oded Irshai, who is the director of the Correspondent Center at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the Center for the Study of Christianity. So thank you for being here as well. We have decided to have two speakers. One introduced by Father Rector is Professor Ben-Sasson, the Chancellor of the Hebrew University. The other, Professor Meloni, who will be speaking from the Christian point of view. This is something special because asking someone from Israel to speak about democracy is very specific. In the sense that we are speaking about a modern state and a democratic state that was created to be the homeland of Jews. And which means a place in which you have, yes, this attention specifically to Jews, but at the same time, tensions with neighboring countries, and the contemporary events are a reminder of this, and the richness and tension inside the country of having different religions and different peoples together. So the stake is enormous, and it's also courageous to take up this theme. And I thank you so much, Professor Chancellor Ben-Sasson, for having traveled from the United States, well, through Tel Aviv, but from the United States to come and meet us. Thank you.
Usually you should start with the topic, and it's easy to start with the topic after the introductions that we got. However, there are circumstances that bring me to say a few words of introduction, personal ones, institutional ones, and later on we run to the topic. First of all, we all remember Hubert. I remember him from the days I was a professor at the university, later on when I served in the Knesset on the Committee Law, Justice and Constitution. This committee is involved in legislation, and I dedicated 4 years to draft a new Israeli constitution. We never had a constitution. You can relax. We still don't have it yet. However, I'm going to share with you some of the secrets from home that took place when we tried to fight with the topic. And that's the second point. Even though the days of Hubert at that time, some 10 months ago, were very difficult, Aldegonde invested both time and attention to make sure that this topic is raised, that I'm not going to talk about Middle Ages, that's my specialty, but I'm facing the challenge that Bea Center put in front of you, us and itself, to face with this challenge. It's not a simple topic, as Professor Vito just mentioned to us. So I thank you, Aldegonde, for all the way, but at the same time, for taking us to this challenge, venture, endeavor of this evening. It will take 35 minutes by the time I start talking. I haven't started. Thirdly, time's mind. In few hours, when dark goes down, we commemorate in Israel and worldwide the Memorial Day for the Holocaust. It's connected hand in hand, backwards to the history of the Jewish people, forward to the history of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, but do not be mistaken. And don't take me wrong, I say it not loud, but I should cry it. It is an issue of the world. We should all think something about this Memorial Day. Nowadays there is an International Memorial Day. The ones that he commemorates tonight and tomorrow is going back to the rebellion of Warsaw Ghetto, and this is the gist and part of the content of the Memorial Day that we commemorate in everywhere that remember the dates and the events. But at the same time, happiness goes with the sorrow hand in hand. 70 years and 1 week ago, hear me well, 70 years and 1 week ago, a group of people sat both in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, drafting the dream of years to build an independent state of Israel, which wasn't an idiom at that time, and they bravely wrote a document that until nowadays is the message, the platform. I may use the word rock. Later on I'll use it in a different context, but it is a rock that in many times the democracy of the state of Israel based on this message. The independence scroll of the state of Israel 70 and 1 week ago started as the following. The land of Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people, and whenever you see white, I wrote it for the Jewish issue, what we said, the Jewish state, and whenever you see light blue, it's going to be the part of the democratic minorities and other issues. So that's the didactics that I use. I don't have any other didactics because I don't know how to sing. Here the spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here the first attained the statehood, created the cultural values of a national and universal significance, and gave the world the eternal book of the books. And it says as the following: in the year 1897, Herzl announced in Basel the idea of the Jewish state, and the Jewish people were supposed to start, and then they ran to Balfour Statement in 1917, so it's 101 years ago. We commemorated it just recently, and it's important now, the second sentence, because it goes to the heart of the political and legal status of the State of Israel. It says the following: Balfour Declaration of the 2nd November 1917 reaffirmed the mandate of the League of Nations, which in particular gave international sanction to the historical connection between the Jewish people and Eretz Israel, and to the right of the Jewish people to rebuild its national home. Now, from Balfour Statement, which was an official statement of the British mandate, we move to the nations. On November 29, 1947, please keep it in mind, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution calling for the establishment of the Jewish state in Eretz Israel. So here we are. There is a decision of the nations, either Balfour or the General Assembly of the United Nations. It talks about a Jewish state. They talk, excuse me for saying they, talked about Jewish state. It's on our shoulders, the people of the Eretz Israel area, to make it into the message of the United Nations. So this is the message that was announced in November 1947. From this point on, the building of the State of Israel starts according to the charter that we were given at that time. We can move on in this declaration. We are not going to read all of its article. And the next paragraph takes us that the State of Israel announces itself, it's not according to the order, announces itself to be equal, to be open to any minority, and equality will be part of life in the State of Israel as it follows. The State of Israel will open for Jewish immigration, we shall talk about it, and for integrating all of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country, the benefit of its inhabitants, all inhabitants, it's written. It will be based on freedom, justice, peace, envisaged by the prophets of Israel, and will ensure complete equality of social and political rights of all inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. In the same place. In the life of the State of Israel, since we do not have a constitution, this basic message that was read 70 years ago as the platform for the State of Israel remains the rock, the basis, and the foundation of anybody who makes any decision in the State of Israel. And from time to time, whenever a case goes to court, court still uses this declaration as platform for democracy, equality, search of freedom, commitment to any citizen of the State of Israel. If that's the case, what's wrong? If that's the case, why a question mark about living together, State of Israel, Jewish state, and democracy? Does it go hand in hand, as the question was asked at the beginning, in harmony? So the answer is not in harmony, in kind of normal, usual life, with different crises on the way to teach us that the problem hasn't been solved and we need a real answer for the tension between the two. Examples. One example. Series of dozens of religious laws that were decided upon during the last 70 years of the State of Israel. The last one was a few weeks ago, the law on closing supermarkets on Saturdays, Sabbath. Is it a right law or wrong law? You don't know. Did it have an official majority? The answer is yes. Does it mean that we have an essential democracy when we move such a bill, when we move such a law in the Knesset? This is the question that I would like to pinpoint for 2 minutes. So yes, nowadays there is a law that any new supermarket that wants to open in a new municipality that doesn't have any bylaws on this issue cannot pass but by the decision of the Minister of Interior, which is a change of the status quo that we had beforehand. Why was it done? Because it was a demand, there was a pistol on the table of the coalition by the ultra-Orthodox parties that if this law, this bill does not pass, then they leave the coalition. Then the coalition falls apart. Then the question is, what is the power of the government without having a support of 61 votes out of 120? So that was the simple question. And the decisions that was made by the members of the coalition, they didn't want, they struggled, they didn't want it as it used to be, because majority of the population in Israel is secular. And keeping 1 day a week, when everything is closed, is not an easy issue for people around. Therefore, there was a lot of resentment by secular people, by secular citizens in the state of Israel against this law. What did I say? Officially, it moved. Officially, there was a majority for this law. But does it cover essential democracy? This is the meaning. Is it the meaning of essential democracy? I don't go to a shop on Shabbat. You see, I am observant. But what about other citizens who felt that there is a change? They don't want to decide to pass all the laws of Shabbat, but they want to have in one day of the week an opportunity to go to the supermarket and to buy something, and other places likewise. So this is one example of many. And in Israel, you have series of laws that were decided upon during the years due to the coalitions that the State of Israel created, and these laws could be defined as religious laws. So from the point of view of Jewish state, from the point of view of Jewish contents, you have a lot of satisfaction. But does it cover the real meaning of democracy, that accidentally, from time to time, you have a majority to pass this law and the majority to move another one? This is the question that stands behind the daily life of Jewish democracy when it comes to the definition of Jewish state. But it's not the only way to define a Jewish state. Jewish state can deal with symbols. Day of Independence. Did I mention that tomorrow we have a memorial day for the Holocaust? So it's a Jewish symbol. We do have festivals. We do have cultures. You know, there is one day in the year in Israel that no car moves in the streets. No car moves in the street. Yes, bike, yes, but no car. No car, no motorcycle, no electronic or technological, highly technological vehicle runs in the streets. This is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, we call it. According to the law, you can take your car and run to the street. According to the law, you can drive, but nobody drives. Why is it so? It became a symbol, and you can use a symbol without using legal formative elements in order to make it a mandatory law and to create an essence of religion or an essence of a culture that defines it as a Jewish presence. Nobody has any doubt. Whenever you go in streets in Israel, in Yom Kippur, it's a unique day. There are also some legends about Rome. Rabbi Akiva and Titus, they spoke about, or Adrianus, depends on the version, spoke about the word of God and the word of the Kaiser. So, tell them, said Rabbi Akiva, not to put any fire around with your decision. And then they walked around and they found here a little fire, another fire. Somebody said that his kids are not well. Somebody said that he forgot, he didn't get the message of the Kaiser, Adrianus or Titus, I said. And Rabbi Akiva said, let's go to the Jewish area and let's see what happens on Saturday. Nobody puts a fire. So this is the word of God. Does the word of God need another support for human beings in voting in the Knesset, in the parliament, to support the decisions that was made in Sinai or in other place? Is it needed? So legislators in Israel for 70 years were sure that it is needed. And some of them are sure that it is needed for the future also. And whenever it comes to this point, this is one of the clashes that I referred to beforehand to ask about a harmony. At the end, everybody knows how to live under these laws. At the end, some find solutions in one way or another. But should it come to such attention whenever you've got a supreme divine mandate to keep the commandment, whoever wants to keep it, keeps it, and those who don't, they have a freedom of choice in religion. Otherwise, what's the meaning of freedom of choice in religion? This is a soft example. I'm going to share with you now with a strong one and to run to some of the solutions. One of the strongest ones that brought me to the political stage took place when there was a tension about political issues, whether to give up some of the parts of the land of Israel in a negotiation agreement in the future. Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister, and he was in a process, Oslo process, and the byproducts of Oslo process, about to give up other parts of the land of Israel in order to come to peace in the Middle East. And peace in the Middle East is a broader meaning of democracy, and I'll come to it soon because we didn't talk yet about minorities in the state of Israel. I mentioned them in the declaration. It'll come in a second. So what happened at that time? A group of rabbis, very nationalists, came together to an understanding, excuse me for the understanding in quotation mark, they came together to an understanding that this prime minister is a danger for the future of the state of Israel. If it is a political danger, it's fine. Go and vote against him. Demonstrate. Publish articles. That wasn't the case. They issued a religious decision, a mandatory decision by a group of rabbis, that this prime minister is not only a danger, but one should find a way to end his life. I told you it's not a soft story. It's a tough one. Religious authorities, not official ones, gathered together to translate the word of God to political arena in order to create a different history. In this case, it's a real clash. But it goes because it goes to the heart of democracy. It changes not only the history, but the rules of the game. Who runs the state? Whether democratic game rules or decisions that comes from total divine authority that leaves no space to any other option. This issue creates a crisis. We do not talk about harmony. We do not talk about options of misunderstanding. It's an interference that, from democratic point of view, should not be tolerated because there are words of God and options of values that transfer to daily life, but not with divine power translated to political arena verbatim. It was done. At that time, we went back to ask ourselves, so what happened in our history that we arrived to this situation? What was the mistake that brought the state of Israel to this event of murdering of a prime minister by a recommendation, for those who accept this recommendation, quote unquote, by spiritual leaders? So in family business, in many times, it's for the individual. Yes, many suffer. In food, eating, kosher, non-kosher, it's an individual issue at the end of the day. You don't find a grocery, you'll make a grocery. It's not nice, not very convenient, you'll find a solution. But when somebody comes and breaks the whole system, from the basis, you are in trouble. And you have to find solutions that will rebridge, reconnect from parts of the people who would claim to follow the word of God with the decisions that goes to the public political arena, as I said, with no margins, with no doubts, with no options of alternatives. I recommended that we go on the track that we didn't have before, but you have for so many years. Constitution. Why Constitution? Constitution is a set of values, set of laws, not many like to remember. But this one is the basic point and the turning point. Whenever you have doubts, you go back to the basic laws. And the basic laws are phrased as constitution. And whenever you create a constitution, you can create a constitution, then you may create it out of common understanding, not by voting 61 to 59. That's not the way it works. You have to have a majority of 75%, of 80%. You decide what is. Then you go to referendum. You have a common agreement, a general agreement of the population that accepts the rules, the new rules of the game. So we went back to the Constitution because some of us believed at that time that this is not only the bridge, but the highway for the future life of the State of Israel. And in order to do so, we have to keep in mind the two major elements, Jewish and democratic. Jewish state means this is the place that is the haven, the shelter, the future for the people who were persecuted in many, many years around. And mind you, this is the only democratic element in the Middle East for the time being. So if it is not Jewish, maybe it could be something else, but it might not be democratic at the same time. So whenever thinking of it, it goes hand in hand. Even if we want to think of democratic without the Jewish, it needs to be different from the climate around, from the neighborhood we live in. So that's one topic. The other one is democratic. If you think of yourselves to be Jewish, namely, there are some advantages, not the individuals, for the public Jew as an idea, then you have to compensate any minority in the state. Again, I repeat on it. You have to compensate any minority in the state. It could be an ultra-Orthodox Jewish minority. You have to find a way to compensate them. They do not feel at home. They don't like democracy. They don't want to serve in the army. They want to live in their ghettos. You have to compensate Arabs. You have to compensate non-Jews who are not Arabs. Around 300,000 Russian relatives of Jews who came from abroad, who don't have yet any personal legal status in the State of Israel. You have to compensate them not as individuals, because whenever you used already the term Jewish, you have to find a way for the minority to define itself. So we created kind of a balanced constitution that uses the Jewish and democratic state, that uses the opportunity, and these are the parts of the Constitution that I would like to present in the coming few minutes, just to show you the direction of optional harmony between Jewish and democratic state. And I am not naive, because this day, 10 years ago, I brought together all parties in the Knesset to a separate session, not in the Knesset. We went to the Galilee, Jesus area if you want, if we're here, near the Sea of the Galilee. We spent 3 days after working 3 years diligently on the draft of the Constitution, 200 articles passed without a problem. There are around 20 profound ones, serious ones, that are still in doubt, in debate. So we isolated them, and we tried to come to an agreement between us, representatives of all parties. It was never published at that time. Later on, somebody published some minutes from these meetings, and believe it or not, we came to general consent between ourselves, different parties, as I said. No Arab agreed to come, but I quoted them separately, and we came to understanding on major parts of it. But trust me, at that time, Arab members of the House and from out of the House wrote 3 different constitutions, because there was a feeling that we come to a state, that the state of Israel comes to an understanding that we write a constitution. Basic principle: the state of Israel is called Israel. Israel shall be a Jewish and democratic state. At the same verse, the state of Israel act with equality towards all its citizens. The system of government shall be parliamentary democracy. That's the beginning. This is the introduction. This is not the introduction. The introduction to the Constitution we read already. It is the scroll that was written 70 years ago. That was the decisions that we made, because it was broad, opening the mind, talking about the history, talking about the commitment. Language, I can go, I don't want to do it now. So Arabic shall be an official language, while Hebrew shall be the language of the state. But Arabic is an official language of the state. Means that any document, any name of a street, any official message should be brought in both languages. Then you have the calendar, and you have options of different calendars to compensate. So that's the kind of a balance that we suggested. Then this one is unique. The right to return is only for the Jews. This is 5 minutes. It's more than I dreamt of. Thank you. So it's as I said, this is unique clause. It deals optionally with any individual Jew, and this is the special law that, in my mind, reflects the real meaning of Jewish state. Not the religious laws about the Sabbath, not the religious laws about the language. This one, or the language, others, these one are cultural. This one is essential. If you demand it to be a unique place that has got a majority of Jewish people, then you have to adopt this law of return. And in many ways, I still have some resentments, because some of you know that is a back-to-back law to the Nazi laws that put the Jews outside the society. The degrees of relations are still the same degrees of relation, defined in Nuremberg, defined in the Israeli law until it is changed. So law of return, any Jew who wants to come back to Israel can go to Israel. Any convert to Judaism can be part of it. Israeli citizenship, we put clause number, article number 9 in the Constitution. Israeli citizenship shall be granted to any person who was resident thereof. And now there is a definition how you have your residency. If you were born in Israel, be Arab, Muslim, or Christian, atheist, or who knows what, any religion, born in Israel, you've got this status. And then it goes to what I defined before, minorities. It's a strong law. The state of Israel shall guarantee the status of Arab minority, the Druze minority, and other minorities in its midst. This is the compensation, maybe not 100% balanced, the compensation on what was defined as Jewish state beforehand. I can go now on other articles. I'm not going to do so. But I would like to say the following. In all along this process, we found ways to balance in order to create a new platform to the state of Israel. Accidents happen in history. Prime ministers are caught from time to time in crimes. sometimes are not caught. So happened that we finished our business, as I said, 10 years ago to the day of today in the Sea of Galilee. A few months later, the Prime Minister resigned, the State of Israel went to elections, and the presents that we wanted to give to the State of Israel in its 60th birthday in that February, instead we went for elections and the whole picture was changed. It's not the end of the story. What I wanted to show you in these three parts of my presentation were A, the ideology at the beginning, equality, Jewish haven, and dream of living together. Secondly, I isolated two crises. One soft, the Sabbath, one strong, the murder. Then I ran with you to one of the solutions. I do believe that without a constitution, it will be very difficult to bridge. I do believe that constitution needs a mood, some people to be willing to do. I quoted the House since these years many times to go back to think of the Constitution. There is no will nowadays to write a Constitution. I'm not sure that if it would have been written these days, it would have been a balanced Constitution. So maybe it's better not to write it today, to wait for tomorrow. But keep it in mind that in my understanding of the Israeli situation, many want the harmony, even though they do not know exactly how to do it, like yourselves now. Thank you very much.
I want to address a question to Professor Ben-Sasson. I am a diaspora Jew, very concerned about the state of democracy in the world and in Israel in particular. And I learned a lot about your work about the Constitution, things that I actually did not know, the drafting of the Constitution. So my question would be, given the current complexion of the Knesset, and in particular, the proposals by the Minister of Justice, Ayelet Shaked, concerning, two things that are very important. One is the fact that Jewishness would take precedence on democracy. And the other one would be the fact that the status of Arabic as a language would be demeaned. It would not be an official language of the State of Israel, if I understand, contrary to your drafting of the Constitution. What are the chances that these proposals that I find, very adverse, personally, to the future of democracy in the State of Israel? What are the chances that these things would come through, or that, in a sense, public opinion and the Knesset in Israel would go back to a consensus of the kind that you formulated? Thank you very much.
Grazie. C'è una domanda qui.
Hi, my name is Samantha. I'm a student at the Cardinal Bea. And so my question is for Professor Ben-Sasson, and I wrote it because I was nervous. So my question, I think, is particularly topical on the eve of Yom HaShoah. Is there a way to remain Jewish and avoid becoming a messianic state? This is, I think, a conversation, a debate that is very topical in Israel. We see Professor Leibovitz talking very clearly, and in my opinion, convincingly, of the dangers of becoming a messianic state. As you mentioned, we see the real political issues with the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in Messianic, which comes in this whole era of Rabbi Kook and Gush Eminim. But then we also, especially on the eve of Yom HaShoah, look at post-Shoah theology, which very clearly sees Israel as God showing his face to the Jewish people in a way it's almost necessary in a pastoral dimension, especially in a post-Shoah world. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that, if it's possible to remain both Jewish and Messianic, but also, if that is the case, is it possible to also remain democratic with this extra added characteristic? So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, up there, Jean-Pierre, Father Jean-Pierre Sonnet.
So many thanks to the two lecturers. It's not so much a question, but an observation. In this very same hall, some 5 years ago, Professor Levinson, Bernard Levinson, gave a very interesting lecture entitled "The First Constitution," about the book of Deuteronomy. The chapters 17 to 18 of Deuteronomy feature a theory somehow of the separation of powers, of the spheres of powers, the judge, the king, the priest, and the prophet. And it's a kind of blueprint of our constitutions. And it's the absolute character of God's Torah and God himself that makes it possible to relativize the spheres of power. And he concluded saying that democracy is born not only in Athens, but also in Jerusalem.
I had said 3 questions, but I would be very happy if there was also a question for Professor Meloni. we want to make him work until the end. So if ever there's also, well, another question, Father Kolarczyk.
This could be directed to both of you. I was very engaged with your concern, Ben-Sasson, regarding a constitution that guarantees certain rights for a majority, at the same time protecting the rights of the minority. I'm a Canadian, and we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1982. And though Canada often is seen as a place that protects the rights of minorities, we have a terrible time with it, as a matter of fact. So don't think that just because you put it in the Constitution that difficulties will not arise. So it's more a comment than this. I think this is going to be a struggle all the way. I'm not sure there's going to be ever any easy solution between religion and power, religion and democracy, or religion and secularism.
I think it will. Sarà soprattutto il professore Ben-Sasson.
So I'll try to manage and not to be looked like naive or to talk naivete. So after the discussion of Professor Meloni that actually put the framework to thinking about the options, and I found myself very much in the context, because when we wrote the draft of the Constitution, in 2 minutes I'll say it, we used a lot. 3 major sources, I must admit. One was the German Constitution. I spent a lot of time in the Bundestag. I met with President Herzog, who made the European Constitution that you criticize of not having, but there is something for Luxembourg. So he dedicated time to me as a humble parliamentarian in order to teach me how it was done. I spent a lot of time with the Canadian, with Kotler, who was involved in the Charter of Rights in Canada also. And the lessons that I studied, and now it's the answer to your question, that the process by itself creates a new mood around in the state. And you heard it also from Professor Meloni. That's the educational part, and the essential part that he repeated again and again, what's in values of the Constitution. I couldn't specify it. So the process of making it and the values behind that you preach for whenever you do it must create, should create, and at that time we thought that it, in the process of making, a consent around minorities and the state of Israel. And I told you that I even invested a lot of time in going to the Arabic, not only parties, but to the constituency. So everybody knows that after the written text, there are life. But whenever there is a written text as a platform, you have a platform. You are not in the air. B, nobody comes to you like this wise student or professor who asked me about Messianic state. It is a dangerous message if we think the state only in religious terms. Automatically you lose any power, any source of power of the individual and the democracy as an essence. So therefore, Israel will not be a messianic state unless in the dreams of people. So people think in their minds that it goes to this direction and they pray for it. It's fine. You can continue praying. But as long it is as Israel, as in Italy, as in any other modern state, that the source of authority comes from the public and from the natural values. You heard very well about natural values and sources. In this case, you lose the threaten, and I hope also you lose the dream of building a messianic state. And I didn't mention it. By writing a constitution, each of us in the Galilee and nowadays deleted half of the dreams. That's part of the game. You come with dreams, you give up, and she gave up, and he gave up. That's the process that you know that everybody gave up dreams in order to create life. And that's what you heard so beautifully in the clear analysis of Professor Meloni. And I learned a lot as you. To your question, first question. Since I participated in these meetings, even though I'm now a professor, I went to the Knesset worried about the new law that was drafted by Avi Dichter, not by the Minister of Justice. And this law is very dangerous. However, don't worry. And I'll tell you why. It's minutiae, small stories about Israel. Don't worry. It won't move. I'll tell you why. There is one word that everybody wants to be there except for one element. The word is equality. And the ones who are threatened whenever it comes to this word are the ultra-Orthodox. Not because they're secular. No, no. Not because of non-Jews. No, no. Because of the reforms and the conservative Jews. And they would not let it move, the whole package, because of that. So it's playing. Why is it a play? You know, nowadays the Israeli politics needs every day another game to draw the attention of the public to other quote-unquote topics. So as far as I analyze the situation of this basic law that was supposed to change the whole values, Arabic language and Jewish and all of that, it changed the whole game. As far as I know, up to yesterday, it's not going to move. I'll bring you a proof. Today's news brought another toy to the table. That was the overriding topic. You remember it from Canada. So how many do you need for overriding? Is it for overriding? Do you need 61? Is it only for the immigrants, or is it all around the dialogue between Supreme Court and the Knesset? At the end, I hope that this one doesn't go also before we have a complete Charter of Rights. But for the time being, I think that that's the answer to you. Messianic, you can have a dream of Messianic. It's not going to be, because no state will build itself on dreams. It has to be on a foundation, and reality's foundation could dream on Messianic ideas, values, and other things. But it's not the basic laws of the state. And if you want to go to Deuteronomy 17:18, it's nice to have it. It's a question of the source of the authority. Is it the source of authority of divine words? We are in trouble. If it is a nice to have idioms put in the context of the Constitution, we have many of these, not only from Deuteronomy, trust me. Other verses are also cited. These are the part of culture that reflects the experience that is so important for the life of nation.
I think we can thank our speakers again because we really confronted the questions and the real questions. Thank you so much.